Josh Jacobs is getting brutally roasted across the NFL world after the Packers star was arrested on multiple disturbing charges Tuesday morning. But what's making the backlash even messier is that several players and fans now seem completely done defending him, and some of the reactions going viral are absolutely ruthless. The Hobart Lawrence Police Department was dispatched to a complaint involving Jacobs around 8:30 a.m. on Saturday, May 23rd. 3 days later, everything changed. The Green Bay Packers and indeed the league at large were taken by surprise when it came out that running back Josh Jacobs turned himself in to Hobart Lawrence Police Station on May 26th after a warrant was issued for his arrest 3 days earlier. Not a dramatic police chase, not a public confrontation, just a man walking into a police station knowing what was waiting for him. And what was waiting for him was serious. He now faces 5 charges: battery, domestic abuse, criminal damage to property, domestic abuse, disorderly conduct, domestic abuse, strangulation and suffocation, and intimidation of a victim. 4 of these charges are misdemeanors, with the strangulation and suffocation charge being the lone felony. That felony is the one that stopped people in their tracks. Strangulation is not a charge that carries a light sentence or an easy social media defense. If convicted of the latter, Jacobs could face up to 6 years in prison, whilst the other 4 combined could see him given up to a maximum of an additional 1.5 to 2 years of jail time. So the internet heard felony strangulation, and the reactions came pouring in. On X, the comments were raw, unfiltered, and often brutal. The meme started with the "once a Raider, always a Raider" angle, referencing Jacobs' 5-year tenure in Las Vegas and a 2021 DUI incident that had long been swept under the rug. Then came the Ray Rice comparisons. Ray Rice walked so Josh Jacobs could run was circulating within hours of the arrest breaking. NFL fans on Reddit were calling the strangulation charge a big predictor and a horrifying charge that changes everything. Bears fans, Lions fans, Vikings fans, every NFC North rival came out swinging. Comments like "no more playoffs for Green Bay" and "the Packers did this to themselves" were flooding threads. Fantasy football communities were in full meltdown. Do not draft warnings were being pinned on Jacobs' profile pages before the day was out. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, one particular joke started gaining traction. He'll join the Chiefs. More on that in a minute. Through Ian Rappaport, Jacobs' attorneys released a statement that read, "Josh vehemently denies the allegations, and this matter is in the early stages of investigation, with important evidence that has not yet been made public. We ask for fairness and restraint while the judicial process takes its course." A tight, carefully worded legal response, but on the internet, nobody was waiting for the judicial process. The phones were already out. The mugshot was already circulating. The Packers told CBS News in a statement, "We are aware of the matter involving Josh Jacobs. As it is an ongoing legal situation, we will withhold further comment." An NFL spokesperson also told CBS News in a statement that it was aware of the report. Both the team and the league doing the bare minimum, acknowledging it exists, then going completely silent. Meanwhile, the Packers had literally started OTAs on the same morning the arrest broke. Green Bay began OTAs on Tuesday. Head coach Matt LaFleur was scheduled to speak with the media on Wednesday. You can only imagine what that press conference was going to look like. From a football perspective rather than a legal one, the situation creates significant uncertainty for Green Bay moving forward. Jacobs was expected to play a major role in Matt LaFleur's offense this season, and the people online who were roasting him the hardest, they weren't just clowning on Jacobs as a person. A significant number of them were clowning on the Packers organization for what this meant for their 2026 season. The wound was fresh, and everything about to follow made it much, much deeper. To understand just how loud the internet got, you have to understand what Josh Jacobs represented before May 26th. Jacobs signed with the Packers as an unrestricted free agent 2 years ago, agreeing to a 4-year, $48 million contract after spending his first 5 NFL seasons with the Las Vegas Raiders, who selected him in the first round of the 2019 NFL Draft out of Alabama. That contract was a statement. Green Bay does not hand out $48 million to just anyone. The Packers, an organization with a reputation for careful, character-first roster building, opened the vault for Jacobs because they believed he was worth the investment in every sense of the word. The 3-time Pro Bowler enjoyed his best NFL season in 2022, during which he led the league in rushing yards, 1,653, and yards per game, 97.2, en route to being named a first-team All-Pro. That was the Josh Jacobs the Packers were paying for. The guy who could take over a game on the ground. The guy who could be the backbone of a Jordan Love-led offense. The reliable veteran presence in a relatively young locker room. In a Packers uniform, Jacobs had produced 2,258 yards and 28 touchdowns on just 535 carries. 2 years in Green Bay, and the numbers spoke clearly. He was delivering on the investment. Pro Bowl in year 1 with the team, lead rusher in year 2. Heading into his 3rd season with the Packers, the 28-year-old had amassed 2,258 yards and 28 touchdowns on the ground, while averaging 4.2 yards per carry. Jacobs is set to make $11.5 million in 2026 and $13.5 million in 2027. But there are no guarantees left on his deal. That detail, no guarantees, becomes critical the second you read those 5 charges. Because the Packers have the contractual ability to walk away without owing him a single dollar beyond what has already been paid. Jacobs had had a near-perfect record in his personal life before this most recent legal situation, having never found himself in the midst of a legal dispute or controversy. And part of that would have been the reason the Packers felt comfortable handing him a 4-year, $48 million free agent deal back in March 2024. That's the word that matters most there. Comfortable. The Packers were comfortable. Green Bay was comfortable. The fan base was comfortable. And that comfort is exactly what makes this arrest hit so differently. When a player no one trusted gets into trouble, the reaction is a shrug. When a player an entire organization staked its offseason on gets arrested on felony charges, the reaction is something else entirely. If the allegations against Josh Jacobs are ultimately proven to be true, it's difficult to imagine Brian Gutekunst allowing him to remain with Green Bay. The Packers place a premium value on character, and accusations involving domestic violence and strangulation would cross a line. That should have no place in the NFL, or anywhere else for that matter. And so the question that rippled through the fan base immediately became, what happens now? Depending on how the legal process unfolds, the Packers may eventually need to evaluate alternative plans at running back. Names like Alvin Kamara and Joe Mixon started getting thrown around in Reddit threads within the hour. The Packers' backup RBs are Chris Brooks and Marshawn Lloyd. Brooks had 106 rushing yards in 2025, while Lloyd didn't play due to groin, calf, and hamstring injuries. So without Jacobs, Green Bay's run game falls to a guy who managed 106 yards in an entire season, and a guy who didn't play a single snap. That's the roster reality that had Packers fans losing their minds, and NFC North rivals unable to keep from smiling. The background matters. It explains why the reaction wasn't just shock. It was grief. It was betrayal. And for everyone else, it was fuel for the jokes. The arrest alone would have been enough to dominate the sports news cycle for a week. But there was a second layer to this story, one that had nothing to do with football, everything to do with who the internet believes was at the center of the incident, and absolutely everything to do with why this story crossed from sports news into full-scale tabloid territory. Social media users immediately flagged that Jacobs was reportedly dating influencer Ash Kosh, and that she had posted a video of them together on vacation in Cancun. Jacobs had been recently arrested on 5 charges, including domestic abuse. Now, before going any further, it needs to be said clearly, at present there is no official confirmation that Ash Kosh is connected to Josh Jacobs' arrest or investigation in any capacity. Authorities have not identified her as a witness, subject, or person of interest. Jacobs' legal representatives continue to deny wrongdoing as the investigation proceeds. No court findings have been issued, and the case remains active with limited public disclosure from law enforcement. But the internet doesn't wait for official confirmation. The case rapidly gained attention online, where social media users began linking the NFL star to influencer Ash Kosh, following resurfaced rumors and references to a supposed Cancun trip. That Cancun video became Exhibit A. Fans were screenshot hunting, comparing timelines, digging through old posts and stories, trying to piece together a narrative that no one had officially confirmed. Jacobs was most recently confirmed to have been dating model Ash Kosh. Although it is not confirmed how long the pair had been dating, the running back confirmed back in February that he had known her since 2021. Known her since 2021. That's 5 years. And the internet immediately went to work finding every public trace of that timeline. Every photo, every tagged location, every subtle hint that had been ignored before the arrest. Then came a detail that took the drama to a completely new level. Before her name surfaced alongside Jacobs, Ash Kosh had originally become a talking point for football fans due to rumored ties with Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, the Bears quarterback, the face of Chicago's franchise. That connection, real or imagined, turned the Ash Kosh angle from gossip into a full-blown internet spectacle. Within hours, TikTok videos under the hashtag Josh Jacobs stole Caleb Williams' girl had racked up hundreds of thousands of views. The narrative practically wrote itself, and the internet ran with it at full speed, regardless of what was or wasn't confirmed. Kosh spent her early life in Chicago, Illinois, before taking the digital world by storm. Her rise to internet prominence was driven by a steady stream of lifestyle, beauty, and fashion posts that quickly caught the attention of millions. She was already a major internet personality in her own right. But the moment Jacobs' mugshot hit the internet, her name was inextricable from the story. With Jacobs facing 5 legal counts including domestic abuse, a viral internet frenzy around his rumored girlfriend erupted. Following the arrest, the public gaze rapidly shifted toward his inner circle. Rumored girlfriend and prominent internet personality Ash Kosh found herself thrust directly into the heart of a viral media storm, as fans clamored for details on her connection to the running back. The responses online ranged from genuine concern for an unidentified victim to dark humor, to outright toxic behavior directed at a woman who has not been named as anyone in any official capacity. Current reporting is based on preliminary legal updates and publicly available information, while much of the online narrative continues to be driven by unverified social media speculation. But that did not slow the internet down for even a second. The jokes compounded, the memes multiplied. The "He'll join the Chiefs" joke, which had started as a quick football quip in response to the arrest, started picking up a very different energy once the Ash Kosh rumors started flying. The implication being that Jacobs, now potentially cut loose by Green Bay, would land with the Kansas City Chiefs, the team that has become the unofficial NFL landing spot for players arriving with controversy attached to their names. Last week, Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice was ordered to serve 30 days in jail after violating his probation for charges tied to a multi-car crash in Dallas. The Chiefs' recent history of bringing in players with serious off-field situations was not lost on anyone. The "He'll join the Chiefs" joke was brutal precisely because of how much truth it seemed to contain. The internet roasts were loud. The social media pile-on was immediate and relentless. But there is a much quieter process now happening inside the walls of the NFL offices. One that could permanently alter the trajectory of Josh Jacobs' career, whether he is convicted in a court of law or not. The NFL has a personal conduct policy, and the language of that policy is deliberately broad. The personal conduct policy states, "It is not enough simply to avoid being found guilty of a crime in a court of law. We are all held to a higher standard and must conduct ourselves in a way that is responsible." Promotes the values of the NFL and is lawful. Players convicted of a crime or subject to a disposition of a criminal proceeding are subject to discipline. But even if the conduct does not result in a criminal conviction, players found to have engaged in prohibited conduct will be subject to discipline, including actual or threatened physical violence against another person, including dating violence, domestic violence, child abuse, and other forms of family violence. That last part is critical. The NFL does not need a conviction. They do not need a jury verdict. A player violates this policy when he has a disposition of a criminal proceeding, or if the league's investigation demonstrates that he engaged in conduct prohibited by the policy. In cases in which a player is not charged with a crime, or is charged but not convicted, he may still be found to have violated the policy if the credible evidence establishes that he engaged in prohibited conduct. This is the part that makes Jacobs' legal team's careful statement important evidence that has not yet been made public about more than just criminal court strategy. It is also a message to the NFL's own investigation, because whatever that evidence is, the league is going to conduct its own parallel process, regardless of how the criminal case unfolds, with regard to violations of the policy that involve criminal assault or battery, domestic violence, dating violence, child abuse, and other forms of family violence. A first violation will subject the violator to a baseline suspension without pay of 6 games, with possible upward or downward adjustments based on any aggravating or mitigating factors. The presence of possible aggravating factors may warrant a longer suspension. Possible aggravating factors include, but are not limited to, a prior violation of the policy, Similar misconduct before joining the NFL, violence involving a weapon, choking, repeated striking, or when an act is committed against a particularly vulnerable person. Read that list of aggravating factors carefully. Choking. That word is sitting right there in the NFL's own policy documentation. And Jacobs is facing a felony strangulation charge. If the league's investigation finds that conduct occurred, the baseline 6 games becomes a floor, not a ceiling. The NFL doesn't outline specific standards for suspensions in its personal conduct policy, with one exception: domestic violence. After the fallout surrounding Ray Rice's 2-game suspension following a domestic violence case in 2014, the NFL revised its policy for offenders to face a 6-game ban on the first offense and a lifetime ban on the second offense with the chance to apply for reinstatement. The Ray Rice case is the reference point that every fan and commentator reached for. The moment Jacobs' charges became public, celebrity news website TMZ posted a video of Rice dragging Palmer's body out of an elevator after knocking her out. For the incident, Rice was suspended for the first 2 games of the 2014 NFL season. In a news conference announcing longer suspension lengths for future domestic violence incidents, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell said that he didn't get it right in deciding Rice's punishment. That public admission of failure, "I didn't get it right," forced the league to construct a policy framework that actually had teeth. The most evident change was the new 6-game suspensions for first-time offenders, a monumental difference from before, where players in the past were suspended on average 1.5 games for prior domestic violence incidents before 2014. Furthermore, a player's second offense can bring with it a lifetime ban from the NFL. 6 games minimum. Potential lifetime ban on second offense. A parallel investigation that operates independently of criminal courts. No guaranteed money left on the contract. That is the box Jacobs has landed himself in, and the NFL world knows it. Much of the reaction across social media quickly shifted toward how the Packers would replace a running back, instead of addressing the NFL's broader history with domestic violence allegations. That disconnect is part of why the league continues to face these issues year after year. It is a fair point. The Hill joined the Chiefs jokes, the fantasy football panic, the NFC North rivals celebrating, all of it lands on top of something genuinely serious. A conduct policy designed in the aftermath of one of the most damaging scandals in NFL history is now about to be applied again. The question is whether the league gets it right this time. So, did NFL players actually roast Josh Jacobs? Was it brutal? Let's be honest about what the internet actually produced. The research on this is clear. The most vicious, most viral, most brutal reactions to Josh Jacobs' arrest came from fans, rival supporters, commentators, and social media personalities, not from a coordinated pile-on by current NFL players. The NFL players' roast Josh Jacobs framing that spread through headlines and thumbnails was, in large part, the internet doing what the internet does, amplifying the loudest voices and labeling the collective noise as something more organized than it actually was. What we did get from the NFL world was carefully measured. A Packers spokesperson released the following statement: "We are aware of the matter involving Josh Jacobs. As it is an ongoing legal situation, we will withhold further comment." The NFL also addressed Jacobs' arrest with a short statement of its own. "We are aware of the report and have been in contact with the club." Translation: everyone who matters is keeping their mouth shut until the legal process advances. That's actually correct behavior, but it stands in complete contrast to what was happening everywhere else online. The fans went in. Rival fan bases went in hardest. Jacobs was booked into Brown County Jail on 5 charges: battery, domestic abuse, criminal damage to property, domestic abuse, disorderly conduct, domestic abuse, strangulation and suffocation, and intimidation of a victim. Each one of those charges was turned into a different brand of internet content within hours. The strangulation charge became the headline everyone led with. The once a Raider jokes were a callback to a fan base that watched him walk out the door and immediately wondered if Green Bay had made a mistake. The Ray Rice comparisons appeared within minutes, a reminder that the league has been down this road before and handled it badly. And then there was "He'll join the Chiefs," the joke that cut the deepest because of the layer of truth underneath it. Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice was ordered to serve 30 days in jail after violating his probation for charges tied to a multi-car crash in Dallas, just days before Jacobs' own arrest. The Chiefs, with their long history of winning despite off-field controversies surrounding players on their roster, had become a punchline and a prophecy simultaneously. The joke was brutal, not because it was mean, but because it was plausible. Now here is where it matters to separate entertainment from reality. There is no official confirmation that Ash Kosh is connected to Josh Jacobs' arrest or investigation in any capacity. Authorities have not identified her as a witness, subject, or person of interest. No details have been given regarding the victim. An unidentified person filed a complaint on May 23rd. An investigation followed. A warrant was issued. Jacobs turned himself in. That is the factual framework. And everything beyond it is speculation, internet myth-making, and social media toxicity dressed up as commentary. Jacobs' attorneys swiftly shot down the accusations posed against their client, insisting that vital evidence still hasn't come to light. Josh vehemently denies the allegations, and this matter is in the early stages of investigation, with important evidence that has not yet been made public. What that evidence is, we don't know. What the victim's identity is, we don't know. Whether these charges result in a conviction, we don't know. What the NFL will do with its own investigation, we don't know yet. What the Packers will do with a contract that has no guaranteed money remaining. If the Packers eventually decide to cut Jacobs, the team would have $6.25 million in dead money, clearing up $8.3 million in cap space. That's a financial path that makes walking away realistic if the legal situation escalates. Jacobs is far from the only player who has recently found himself in legal trouble, and the NFL has a pattern of high-profile domestic violence cases that cycle through the news, generate enormous short-term outrage, and then fade before outcomes are fully resolved. This one has the ingredients to be different, not because of the internet noise, but because of the specific nature of the charges. A felony strangulation allegation does not get quietly resolved with a fine and community service. If convicted, Jacobs could face up to 6 years in prison, whilst the other 4 combined could see him given up to a maximum of an additional 1.5 to 2 years jail time. The roasts were loud. Some of them were genuinely funny in that dark internet way that sports fans have always trafficked in. Some of them were ugly, directed not at Jacobs, but at people who have not been charged with anything and are not part of the legal proceedings. The "he'll join the Chiefs" joke landed because it captured something real about NFL culture. That winning covers a lot of ground, that controversy has a shelf life, and that the league has a habit of finding uses for talented players, regardless of what surrounds them. But underneath the memes and the NFC North schadenfreude and the fantasy football panic, there is something real and serious happening. A complaint was filed, an investigation is ongoing. 5 charges were brought. As a result of the investigation, Josh Jacobs was subsequently arrested on May 26, 2026, and booked into the Brown County Jail. This remains an active and ongoing investigation. The internet will move on to the next story. The courts will not. And whatever the outcome for Jacobs, for the Packers, for the unidentified person at the center of those 5 charges, that process is just getting started.